Hello, so today I thought I'd do hopefully a quick video on how I created these ATCs. They're walnut ink, which is the background, and then the little flowers are done with fine liners, just hand drawn, and walnut ink coloured. I've put a few little marks from a stencil and a wording which is from Fox and Found Studio printables. It's a nice sheet of all different words. There's some sort of a beigey colour and there's also some black ones. They're just nice to cut out and stick on. So I thought I'll take you through the process of something similar to this. They may not end up the same, but something similar. I started those particular ATCs because I had a few scraps of scrapbooking paper. I think it's a Prima one is this, and they were just left over from another project, and they were sort of squares and rectangles and all different pieces that were not particularly useful for anything else. The first thing I did was, I love numbers, I love anything to do with numbers, but I actually don't want them to be at the forefront with this. So I've got some pebeo gesso, just white gesso, and this is a seam roller. You get them from the DIY stores. I use it as a little mini brayer, and because it got quite worn and the edges were breaking, I broke the edges up a little bit more, so it gave an uneven sort of, it wasn't such a line. It is sort of foam, but because it's had so much paint brayered on, or helped to brayer the paint on, it's gone quite solid, so it's almost like a rubber one now, because the paint has solidified. So I put a little bit of gesso just on my glass mat at the side. Got a very messy craft desk at the moment, it's very cluttered, but I'm sure you'll forgive me. And then I just brayer over quite unevenly, one way and the other way. Because it's got a white background, you don't particularly see the gesso, but it does help to just knock back the letters, and the walnut ink has different sort of areas, some without gesso, some with gesso, so that sometimes affects how the paper absorbs the ink. So I started by doing that. Let's put that to one side, and then I'll let that dry. I think actually when I had the first initial piece, I just gessoed, just because I had some gesso left over from another project, so I just gessoed it. So we'll let that dry, and then I'll show you how we do the walnut ink. I'll just get rid of that. So we've got a clean surface again. Right, so this is another piece which I've already gessoed, and as you can see, the numbers are knocked back quite a lot. That's an ungessoed piece. So I'll just make sure it's fairly flat. And then I've got some walnut ink powder. Now a lot of people have heard of walnut ink and use it as a liquid. This is a powder, so it needs either a medium added to it or water. Just trying to get my piece of card so it's straight. You can tape it down if you want so that it is straight. So it's a extremely dark brown powder. Looks like the colour of, well, darker than cocoa. Very, very dark. I pick it up with just either a fan brush or this is just a little quite soft brush, not stiff bristles, and I just pick a little bit up on the brush, tap a lot of it back into the pot, and then just add it to the gessoed panel. Some areas I'll put quite a bit, as you can see. Some areas only a small amount. It's better to build it up gradually than it is to go full tilt and put absolutely masses on. So some areas won't have any at all. It's nice to have some white areas with the numbers showing through, so I'll set that aside. Now when I do this next step, I've got a piece of scrap cardboard. It's a cover of a scrapbook book, because when you spray the walnut ink with the water, it can go everywhere, and I just, rather than having to clean up all the time and keep wiping everything down, all the bottles and glues that I have at the back, I just put something underneath it and just propped up at the back so that it stops it from drifting. I've got two small spray bottles that I use. This is actually just from a pharmacy. It's a little travel spray bottle. Or this is a Spectrum Noir spray bottle, and it's just got water in it. You just want a fine mist, basically, and I do it from a fair distance so that I get it a little bit more dispersed, not so intense. And I just keep spraying until the walnut ink starts to move a little, and I get areas of interest, like that. It's nice that there's a white area there or here, but there's more intense ink in other places. You can dry this with a heat tool, but I tend to let it dry on its own. I think I get a better effect. So you can see why I cover the surface, because the walnut ink goes everywhere. So I'll dry that and then we'll come back and do the next process. Right, so I'm back and we'll do the next part of creating these ATCs. Our background is still drying, but we'll create these little flowers. These are just hand drawn, I just draw them. Now this is just copier paper, but it's a thicker copier paper. It's about 160 GSM. So it's got a little bit more body and it doesn't warp quite as much with the water. I've drawn quite a few so that you don't have to wait and watch me draw lots of flowers, but basically I start with just a little circle for the middle. They don't have to be perfect. You don't want a perfect flower. And don't worry if you go a little bit wrong on the first bit, because you will be going over it later. I'm drawing with a fine liner. It's a black fine liner and it's 0.05 millimeters. You can use as bold or as fine as you want. I quite like this because you get a little bit of depth and a little bit of width, so that you've got a little bit of ink, which you'll see that'll travel. These are not permanent. That is the important thing to say. They do react with water. So if you add water to them, they'll move. But that is what we want. If you hadn't got a fine liner, you could do it with an Inktense pencil, anything like that. So I draw a little circle and then I just do uneven, wavy petals to form my flower. If you've got a little bit missing, just go back over it. You can go twice if you want. Basically you're just doing a very rough sketch of a flower. I just tend to put little marks there radiating out from the centre. The leaves are just basically an organic shape of a leaf. You can put a couple of veins if you want, do as much as you want. You can do small flowers as well, or different flowers, just a little circle and go around sort of like a rough daisy, like that. We'll put our pen away. Now here I have got some of the, that's Crafty walnut ink powder, just a little bit. I've put it into this little palette I've got and sprayed it with water. You can do as little or as much water as you want for the depth of colour that you want. I usually try it on the edge just to see how dark it is, and that is about as dark as I want it. I don't want it really, really dark. If it's too dark when you try, just add more water. I've got, this is a Daler Rowney round number 6 simple brush, and I actually got these at a pound shop. I don't know how they managed to get such a good make in the pound shop, but I wasn't asking questions. And I just cut a fair bit of the walnut ink up, and then just get enough that your brush is loaded but not saturating and dripping. And then we're just going to colour the centre of the flower, a little bit more of the walnut ink off, and then just very quickly go out and back with the petals, out to the edges and back. So yeah, out, round and back. And can you see the fine liner has moved? You've picked up the black, which is called a grey of the flower. Instead of just being the walnut ink brown, it's got a little bit of the black as well. Don't worry that you can't see your flower, you will be going over it again. And I just do, for the little ones I just use the end of the brush. For the bigger ones I use the whole width of the brush basically. Leaves, go to the end and then come back down. Because you're going to fussy cut these, it doesn't matter if you go over the edges, if you go over the lines, because you are going to go over when they're dry with a permanent fine liner. I'm just turning this around because it's easier and you'll be able to see better. Those have got 4 petals, those little flowers. These have got 4, but they are a bit bigger. The ink of the fine liner isn't picking up as much with this because these have been drawn a little bit longer than those. That was very fresh because I'd just drawn those to show you. This isn't picking up as much as of the fine liner because it's been on the paper longer. And I do this sweeping action out to the edges and then back, because where the ink gets picked up, it goes into the walnut ink and gives a nice lot of shading. You can do little brush strokes like that. Just make sure you haven't got too much water. So you get the general idea. I won't carry on and do all these flowers, it'd be boring. And then just in the middle you can do a little bit in the middle of the circle. They look very messy at this stage, but they do look a lot better when you put the finishing touches to them. I'll just do one of the 5 petals just so you can see. Hope I haven't got my head in the way. So you're just touching the fine line that you've drawn to drag that ink in. And if you think you want more around the edges, just go with the very fine tip of your brush and go to the edge and pick it up. So it's got a colour of the walnut ink, but it's also got the grey added. So I'll do some more of these, I'll dry them, and then I'll cut some out, and then you'll see where we go from there. Right, so we're back. We've dried our piece of gessoed and then walnut inked piece of card, scrapbook paper card, and I've actually cut this up into 3 ATCs and then 3 little scraps, which I'll use on other things. I could use them partly on other ATCs. So you can see if I take these away and pop those to the side for use later, we've got 3 nice backgrounds. All have got a little bit of white space, which is what I wanted. I wanted some of the numbers to show through. Now I could turn that one round, I could have it upside down, whatever I wished. The next thing I do is I tend to ink the edges. This is Distress Archival ink in ground espresso, which goes nicely with the walnut ink. And I just basically go around the edges to frame the ATC. I'll just do one and then I'll pop those away and do those later. Put the lid on. I've got a micron pen. It's a 0.5. It's archival ink and it's permanent and waterproof. I love these. If I'm going to possibly be adding a little bit more medium on the top, they won't run. Once they're dry, they're permanent. So I'm going to go just round, I'll bring one of these finished ones in so that you can see. I'll just go round the edge, wait to create a little bit of a frame. Don't have to be perfect. I'll just do it freehand. I want that one a little bit thicker, I think. And you can go around once, twice, you can do wriggly lines, whatever you want. But it just adds a little bit of a frame. There we are. Just better check and see if we're still filming. Yes, we are. So that's got a frame. I think I want a little bit of a botanical, so I'm going to just go in and just draw something. Don't think I'm going to repeat this, so I'll probably go for something like a leaf. Which I'll draw just on there. Maybe another one there. Yeah, maybe another one there. Extend those a little bit. Yeah, I think I'll go a little bit thicker lined for the main stem, so I'll just go over there. And when that's dry, that will be permanent. So I'll just work on one ATC at the moment, but obviously you would carry the theme on for all 3 or however many you were doing. Just make those a little bit more defined by going over again. Right, so I'll set that aside. We'll come back to our flowers, which we've drawn. Right way up. They look very, very wishy-washy and messy at the moment. But you can see they've got quite a good tonal range in some of the flowers. I did some more of the little daisy ones, which I can cut out, and the leaves. Just choose whichever you want to work with. I think I'm going to start with, say, this one. So I'm using my archival micron pen, and basically I'm adding the detail in again. So I had a circle I had a very wavy line around the edge of the petals. So I'm going in again and putting the wavy line in. And you see that transforms it completely. I'm putting the little accents into each petal. Just going to see if I've got a finer micron pen. This is a 0.3. So you can see this will be finer. And again, just go around your petals. Can you see I'm not following exactly? I've got little areas where I'm going outside the lines that I had before. That just gives it a little bit more artistic edge. And I do tend to go around twice. And again, not always following where I've been before. And I just think it adds something to the flower. And now what was very messy and untidy looks like a defined flower. I think actually the 0.3 micron is better than the 0.5. But if you've only got 0.5, go with that. The leaves, I'll do the same. I just go and not particularly following the line that I had before. As you see, I've gone twice again. You can do another couple of little bits like that. This one, I'll go around like that, and I'll follow the line all the way to the tip, and then I'll just do veins on one side. So that makes it look a little bit different. I quite like that. We might have that one on this ATC. These little daisies, again, not being ultra careful, just go round again. Sometimes, if they're very small flowers, you won't get the two lines, but you can go on the outside of your lines. Let's do another one. Or you can just do one line. I then get my uniball Signo broad pen. Check it works, yeah. And in the centre you can add some white back. Now sometimes it does draw up the ink and goes grey, so you could use an acrylic pen like a Posca pen if you had a fine white one. The flowers, you can add some little details just into the petals. You can do dots in the centre. Basically whatever you want. And then, as you can see on this one, I just fussy cut them out. I have a very fine pair of embroidery scissors that I use for fussy cutting. And as you do, I'll just get this one cut away. I find it easier to do all the detailing before I cut them out. And we'll go. And as with all fussy cutting, if you move the paper rather than the scissors, you get a lot better cut. So I'll just quickly cut this out as quick as I can. I tend to leave a little tiny edge around, just so that it makes the flowers stand out from the background. Nearly there. There we are. I might put some little black dots in the middle, just randomly. And round here, just round the centre like that. And then decide where we'll put it. I may put it just there and have the stem of the leaves coming out. You can add detail with your white pen. I sometimes go around just inside the black micron and just give it a little bit more detail. Like that. I'll just do this one because I think the other one will be covered up. And as you can see, when you go on to the brown, it makes it stand out a little bit more. Some of the other details that you might have noticed on this one, there and there, I've just done with a white pen, used some sequin waste just as a stencil, and I've added white dots just randomly onto the brown areas. You see there, maybe another little one over here. And then with a black pen, or vice versa, bigger sequin waste, and I just add some circles with the black micron pen. There we go there. We'll go partly. We'll go here. It's a good thing you can lift it up and see where you want to go. There we are. So that gives a little bit more detail. And then I will stick my flower on there. And then I'll probably put a word down here. And if I felt it needed it, I might also do a little bit of additional stamping. I've just got this is an indigo blue. Just move those out of the way. This is an indigo blue stamp, and I'm just using the ground espresso, and I'll just go at the top there because I think it needed a little bit, and then because I've got it there, I'll echo it down here a little bit as well. There we are. I think a word will just finish that off, and I don't actually mind if my flower comes partly over the edge. I think that just adds a little bit. The word, as I say, completely finishes it off. You could add white splashes as well, white splatters if you felt it needed it as well. If you were, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking that the flower is quite grey compared to the background. It hasn't, the walnut ink hasn't showed up quite as much as I thought it might do. So I'm just rooting through my stamps, and I've got this one which is a paper artsy one. It's one of the little minis. So I'll just move the ATC out of the way, and I'm just going to use this script up here, which is quite fine, into the ground espresso, and then I'm just going to add a little bit of stamping on some of the petals. Well, I ended up on all the petals, but anyway. So that just picks up the brown and makes it a little bit more interesting. So there we are. That's the original. That's another version. As you can see, this has got more walnut ink colour. I think I might have had my walnut ink a little bit stronger. But overall this is quite a stronger effect anyway. Those little leaves there were done with the non-permanent fine liner, and then I just dragged the colour into the leaves. Once it was dry I went over it with the permanent one. So, but you could also if you wanted, if you've got walnut ink left over, you could colour your leaves a little bit more as well. I don't think it makes that much difference, but if it was very pale and you wanted them coloured more, you could go over, there we are, the top, and just give them a little bit more colour. You could make them really dark if you wanted, but I don't think it's necessary. So there we are. Once I've put the word on there, I think that will be finished. So I hope you like that, and I hope you give it a go.